All right. Well, I just want to say thank you again for coming to our webinar, An Introduction to Culturally Responsive Teaching. Um, I know we may still have a couple people coming in, but they can get up to speed when they get here. So we'll go ahead and get started and honor your time. Um, Here we go. Okay, so my name is Kristen Campbell. If you joined us last time, you were with my husband Justin Campbell. Together, we formed the Urban Connection Project about 6 years ago, and the purpose of our organization is to raise the odds of success for students in all schools. And we primarily focus with inner city schools, but again, this is for all students. And we do that through culturally responsive teaching. And so that's what this webinar is about. And we're going to dig in a little bit more what that means later. And we typically work with schools, school districts, and college of education programs to help teachers, principals, anyone working with kids to understand what culturally responsive teaching means and be able to implement some of those strategies. And so we do that by providing needs assessments, observations. We do mentorship of small cohorts or new teachers, whatever that looks like. We provide professional development, and we sit in cabinet meetings. I mean, the list can go on, and it's really just based on what the school needs. And so today we wanted to offer a little bit of what we do, as well as tell you about the products that we have as well that support what we do. But before we get started, now that you know a little bit about me, when we are interacting today, we are going to be using the chat box. And so if you've used Zoom before, which I'm sure during this pandemic we've all used at some point, there is a feature to use the chat. You may have to click on the three dots with more under it, if yours looks like mine, to get to it. But that's what we'll be using to interact. We are going to keep everyone on mute just to keep it quick and easy. So hopefully you'll be okay with just my voice for the entire time. But to get us started using the chat box, if we could just tell me where you're joining us from. I know I saw someone in here from Chicago. Shout out where you're coming from to the group, or if you want to message me privately, I can shout it out for you. Totally up to you. But let us know, where are you joining us from? Love it. Phoenix, AZ, Glendale, ooh, California, Dallas, Texas, ATL, Chandler, Tempe, Scottsdale, Lansing. Go Spartans. I am a Michigan State Spartan. All right, Phoenix. So a lot of people here in the Valley, but definitely from other places as well. So welcome. And for myself, I've been in Phoenix for, I can't believe, almost a decade now, which is kind of crazy to say. And originally from Michigan, though. So definitely can see how this is relevant, honestly, across the US. So yeah, okay. So also today, one of the things that we're going to be getting used to is getting out of our comfort zone. And so we like to say that's where the magic happens. That's where the growth happens. When we are typically in person, we like to get up and moving and talking and getting people out of their comfort zone and just getting comfortable being uncomfortable, because that's really the only place that we can actually learn and grow together. And just to give an example, this is me being uncomfortable today because this is actually my first time doing a webinar. So I have presented in front of all kinds of crowds of all different sizes, and that is 100% my thing. This is a little bit different, especially being that I can't necessarily feel the energy of the crowd. But at the same time, this is where we are right now. So I'm getting comfortable being uncomfortable, and I hope you will join me. So as I said, we typically work in this realm of culturally responsive teaching. If you joined us last time, you talked a little bit about what this means, but I'm just going to reiterate that for those of us who are joining for the first time. And so, being a visual learner myself, we created this image to help explain what culturally responsive teaching really is and how how each component of it works together in order to really get the student where they need to be. And so you'll see there in the soil, there is the cultural awareness. And cultural awareness, yes, it's what you think of when you think of culture, such as, ethnicity and nationality and, your traditions and your customs, but it actually goes a lot deeper than that and looks more at identity, the norms that you have, the way that you interact with others, and even deeper than that, some of the implicit biases that we have as a result of our experiences. So it's really about you being able to uncover and dig into why you are the way you are, why you perceive the world in the way that you do, why you see certain actions as respectful or disrespectful, or why you think certain things are acceptable or not. So it's really digging into that. And then on the flip side, looking at that through that same lens for your students and figuring out how you can find that common ground in your classrooms through that lens of cultural awareness. So that is that soil, because it's something we can't see. You got to do it within yourself in order to actually bring that cultural awareness into fruition. Built upon that are systems being expectations, procedures, etc., that provide a safe and structured and trusted learning environment for all of your students, all of your stakeholders, anybody that's interacting within your systems, and it ensures mutual accountability. So it really builds the foundation that we can grow from there, because it creates that mutual accountability, and it kind of helps us to check some of those implicit biases that we have, because we have a system that we can lean towards versus our own thoughts and perceptions. Building from that, we have relationships. Relationships are really those intentional strategies and practices that help to strengthen the bond between ourselves as teachers and our students, or if you're a mentor and the kids that you work with, or even administrator to teachers. It's the relationships that we cultivate in order to really get that student to feel the success that we're getting. That's the goal, right? And finally, you'll see at the top, it's what we come to school for, the rigorous and accessible content. And so this is the intentional strategies and practices that engage students to employ their current knowledge, their experiences, their interests, and help them to use that to learn new content at a high level of critical thinking, making sure that it's really what they need at that grade level to get them to the next level. And so yes, it's what we come to school for, but notice where it lies within this realm of culturally responsive teaching. It's one piece of it. There's a whole lot more that you have to dig into to be a culturally responsive teacher. And so, like I said, this is a very dense subject. There's no way we could really unpack all of this in one sitting, nor is it something that honestly you can check off the box. It's always something that you have to keep going back and checking yourself on and finding new strategies to be able to carry out each of these layers. And ultimately, it's for the purpose of giving that student the keys to their own success, being able to provide the identity for them, being able to provide a system that's going to help them to thrive, cultivating those necessary relationships to support them, and ensuring that they're learning the information that's necessary to get them to the next level. I feel like I'm doing a lot of talking, so I'm going to take a quick drink. Which is going to happen because I haven't talked like this in quite some time. But if you were with us last time, there was homework that was given. Of course, we're teachers, right? Got to give homework. If you did not do your homework, no worries. I will not call you out. But it would not be a bad idea to go back and just revisit it, because it is about doing the work. So all of the information that we're giving, we try to put into some type of action steps, some type of way to apply and think about how this relates to your practice. And so the last time you guys talked about cultural awareness with Justin, and you were asked to examine how certain disconnects within your classroom, both behaviorally and academically, are often rooted in a difference in perception as a result of those cultural experiences at different levels. So you're really thinking about, I perceived it as this, student possibly perceived it as this, maybe that's how we got to this disconnect. How could I handle that going forward? And so again, we're not going to really dig into it. We're not going to punish you if you didn't do your homework. But later today, you will be able to see how that work helps us to be able to build upon that and complete some of the other work that we're going to talk about as well today. And if you didn't have a chance to do it, or you weren't there, or you don't recall, we are going to be posting the first webinar on our website and this webinar as well on our website tomorrow. So you have, those resources at your disposal to go back and do the work. So today we are going to be talking about relationships, so that layer of relationships, and we're going to peek a little bit into the rigorous and accessible content, just a little bit, but mostly really focusing on relationships, which for me is really the bread and butter of teaching. I love cultivating those relationships, but we're going to dig a little bit deeper into what that really means and how, what types of relationships we need to have and the characteristics that we need to show in order for those relationships to actually help the student to be successful, because that's what it's about at the end of the day. So I want you to take a moment and think about your favorite teacher. Throughout your scholastic career, who's that one teacher that sticks out to you that you will always remember? If you are an educator, maybe it's the reason you decided to go into education, but that teacher that sticks out for positive reasons that you remember. And I want you to think about why. Why is it that that teacher sticks out to you? And actually, I'm going to go ahead and invite you guys in to join me at this moment on the chat box. Just shout out what's that teacher's name and a quick reason why. What is it that you remember? It doesn't have to be a big paragraph or anything like that, but what's the teacher's name and why? Why is that teacher so memorable to you? And while you're typing that out, I'll go ahead and share mine. Mine was actually my 4th grade teacher. Her name was Mrs. McCarthy. I had several great teachers, but she just sticks out to me, and it's a couple reasons why. One of which is because she was so in tune with what we liked. So she would always incentivize us with the things that we really wanted. So that was pretty cool. I felt like excited to be at school. And another thing is that I knew she really cared about me, because there was actually a moment when we were supposed to be reading a chapter in a book that was going to have some racially charged conversations, and I was one of very few Black students in the class, and the way that she pulled me to the side ahead of time, and it wasn't like a weird moment, but she really made sure that I felt comfortable, that I felt empowered about what the conversation that would take place, and ways that I could answer questions. I just felt like she really cared. So that sticks out to me. And I'm seeing from others, we've got teachers that stick out because they cared about you and what you were going through. Never judged, always listened, very flexible, focused, and fun. Okay, so we have one that made math exciting, which is how you did well in math, and really challenged you and took the time to extend the lessons. That's awesome. History teacher, woo woo, love history. He told the best stories, got us interested in the subject. Otherwise it would have been boring, I understand. Fun, caring, and motivating. Okay, this person says they knew English wasn't their strength, made them laugh, always pushed you to do better, approached teaching from a different way, treated me like I was one of her own kids, discipline, encouragement, support, intriguing content, systems to alleviate most behavior issues. Nobody wanted to be on her bad side, even though she was very gentle. I love that. Okay. If you have them, keep them coming in. This is going to be something that is saved, so I'd love to go through these as well, because they help to have some context to how you guys have viewed this subject as well. Okay, we've got kind, inviting, approachable, caring. Love it. So obviously you see some common themes throughout those answers, and that's kind of clear where we're going today, but I want to really break down what this looks like, and even give you a chance to assess where you are. Love that. Thank you for adding in. All right, so we're going to start with a term that we use when we talk about relationship building as teachers, and this term is warm demanders. It's a term that's been around since before I was born, so it's not that it's a new term. not expecting for it to be a new term, but hopefully some of the things that are offered today will be a way for you to really see it in a new light and bring some context and action steps towards it. Warm demanders is actually a topic that Judith Kleinfeld wrote about back in 1975. So again, it's been around for a long time, but it's starting to pick up traction again because we're starting to see how increasingly more important it is, especially for students in marginalized communities. And why, as a teacher, it is our duty to become this warm demander, especially for those students who really may not excel in a regular setting. This is who they're looking for and who they can excel with. And so a warm demander is someone who establishes the foundation of the relationship with their students through explicit focus on rapport and trust. I'm going to go back to that word, establish. Okay, so this is the beginning of your relationship. You really want to make sure that you are explicitly focused on rapport and trust, and that's how you lay the foundation. From there, you build upon that with an earned demand for achievement and mutual respect through high expectations and competence in the subject to help students reach success. This is a very condensed version, but we're going to explore this a little bit more and talk more about where you stand currently, as well as some action steps that you can implement. Okay, so we're going to do a quick quiz, and this quiz is going to be for you to assess yourself. Now, going back to getting out of your comfort zone. Comfort zone is when I'm going to build myself up and tell myself I'm doing all the right things. And I'm not saying you're not doing a ton of right things, because I think we are. But if we're going to be honest, there's always room for improvement, right? So as I present these questions, I want you to think about, could I say that this is true for the vast majority of my students, like 90%, that this is true for me, that I really do this? And so there's going to be 5 questions. Of those 5 questions, I would like you to keep track of how many you're saying yes to. Okay, so they're yes or no questions, 5 of them. How many out of the 5 you are saying yes to? First question, do you consistently ask questions to be in the know about students' lives, including information about important people or events? And again, yes, it says students, but really think about really the majority of your students. Okay, and you don't have to answer, this is completely to yourself, completely to yourself. Number 2, do you consciously work to build rapport with your students? And when we're talking about rapport, we're talking about a close relationship where you both understand each other's feelings or ideas and communicate well. So if you're like, yeah, most of my, a good amount. Okay, we're talking about vast majority. So yes or no. Number 3, do you consciously show nonverbal cues like smiling, touch, obviously appropriate, warm or firm tone of voice, and or good-natured teasing? Do your students see that side of you consciously? Number 4, do you provide time and show care, understanding for the needs and issues that your students express? Is there time on a consistent basis for you to show care or an understanding for the needs and issues that your students express? And number 5, would you say that your students would categorize you as likable and loving? And again, vast majority. And this is for you. Again, don't need you to put anything in the chat box, because I want you to really take some time to think about this for yourself. And go ahead and, using that scale, write down what would be your number. So I answered how many of these as yes, 1 to 5, and just not in the chat box, just to yourself. How many? Because you'll want to keep track of that number. Okay, now we're going to do the demand scale. Same thing, 5 questions. How many you're saying yes to, thinking about the vast majority. Do you have high expectations of achievement for all students, no matter their cultural, linguistic, or academic abilities, and expect them to meet them? Do you feel competent in the technical side of instruction? So creating clear sub-objectives to methodically reach learning objectives. Do you actively and consistently plan scaffolds for your dependent learners to have success along with your independent learners? Do you display a clear and authentic enthusiasm for the subjects that you teach? Do you encourage and model the importance of failure in the process of achievement? So again, just to yourself, write down how many out of the 5 that you answered yes to. So you should have 2 different scores. First one for the warm scale, second one for the demand scale. We're going to go through what those different scores can mean and how you are categorized as a result. These different categories come from Judith Kleinfeld's work, where she breaks down what that means as a teacher or as an instructor, and basically helps you to realize where the warm and demand fall when it comes to your interactions with students. So if you found that you scored maybe a 1 or 2 somewhere in the lower for warm and for demand, so let's just say 3 or less for warm and for demand, then you would be categorized as the sophisticate, or in Zaretta Hammond's work, this would be categorized as the elitist. So this isn't necessarily to say like, man, you're not doing the job. This is more so to help you see that you are probably finding success, and that success is typically with those independent learners. If they can get with the program, if they can, basically follow your directions without a ton of accommodations or modifications or scaffolds that are necessary. Behaviorally, they pretty much follow along. You find success with those students. But with the students that may require the more, there is not as much demand, not on purpose, but maybe just not from understanding how to take them from beginning to end, how to take them from where they're at to where they need to be. And then as far as the warmth part, there is that idea that sometimes the relationship should be at a professional distance. And that is 100% true to a certain degree. But for some of our students, we have to learn how to strengthen the warm side, how to strengthen the relationship piece. So if you found yourself in this category, you'll want to work at both. And so we'll talk about how to do that. If you found yourself where your warm scale is a little bit higher, so you scored maybe in the 4 or 5 range, and your demand scale is a little bit in the lower, then Kleinfeld would categorize you as the sentimentalist. And actually it's the same term in the work of Zaretta Hammond. And so in this, if you're in this category, you find yourself as someone who really advocates for students. I mean, you really are on their side, you're invested in their lives, you love them like they're your own. But because of that, it can turn into sympathy. And so sympathy meaning that you do feel bad for their situations and the difficulties that they face. And it can somewhat take a toll on your expectation for them not to succeed, but to be at grade level, to hold those expectations high, or to really push them beyond, if it's not grade level, but push them beyond what is expected of their current abilities. It can turn into that sympathy versus empathy. And so really working on how to still keep the demand high, that's something you're going to want to pay attention to as we go through the rest of this. If you found yourself the opposite, warm scale maybe at a 1, 2, maybe even 3, demand scale at a 4 or 5, then Kleinfeld would categorize you as a traditionalist, or another term for that would be the technocrat. And so these are people who are super enthusiastic about their content. They know their content very well. They have high expectations. They do expect you to meet them. They aren't necessarily feeling bad for those who cannot. excuse me, but they do still have that professional distance. I'm not really trying to create the tight-knit relationships, or I feel like, you know, that's not necessary for you to be able to grasp the information. And so again, we're talking about warm demander. There may be a part of this, and we talk about that warmth, that you want to take some of those strategies. And finally, if you found that you are high in both scales, then amazing, you are a warm demander, but that doesn't get you off the hook. So I personally would also categorize myself here. I think innately I focused on relationships, but at the same time, my expectations were very high. But all that does is just give you maybe a little bit better of a starting point. There's still always work to do, because there's still students who need more of you or need you in a different way than you're used to. So please don't take that as a cool, I got this, but more so as a, that's great. I have some maybe tips to offer when we get to that. But at the same time, I'm looking for more. I'm looking for more ways, because I have already experienced what this can do for students. So I want to make sure that I'm adding more to my tool belt. So just to give you some context, as well as give you the names of where you stand, so that you can find even more resources and get to know your strengths and areas of refinement even more. So now that we know where we stand, how do we become that warm demander? What is it that we need in order to either ramp up the warm side, ramp up the demand side, or even keep them both going simultaneously? So that's what I want to really impart in you today, are some tips or things that I have personally either experienced or through my work as a consultant I've seen, and through the research that I've done. So as we go through some of these, there is going to be a chance for you to join in as well, because I know we have some expertise within the room that I'd love to call upon. So 3 components to becoming a warm demander. The first one is perception awareness. What this means is kind of going back to what you guys talked about last time. So in order to become a warm demander, you really have to have a real conversation with yourself to unlock your implicit biases and establish a belief that every single body in your classroom, in your, whatever your mentorship group, has the capacity and deserves the chance to succeed. Now, I think on a grand scale, we all could say yes to that, but I'm going to keep it real. I'm going to be honest and say that I believe that as a whole. But if I'm going to be honest, there was definitely times in my classroom where I thought, and I could give you a name right now, that kid, I don't know about it. I don't know. Or that kid, I heard he or she always goofs off. They always do this. So you hear the chatter from teachers that have had them, or the family that they come from, and who's in their family, and maybe a kid you've had before. There are some other influences that almost get into your brain and you don't even realize it. And so one of the things that you have to be able to do is to check yourself and see, do you really believe that this kid was waiting for you to be successful, and that's what it takes, that it's in them, you're just going to be the person that brings it out? And the way that you can check this is through the thoughts that you have, through the way that you talk about this kid to maybe some of your colleagues, through the expectations that you find yourself placing on this student. So it really starts with this awareness of, like, how do I perceive each individual kid in front of me, not the class as a whole, because I know we all want the best, but how do I perceive this kid that comes with all of this baggage that I know has done X, Y, and Z? Do I really think that this kid can succeed, because I have to be the warm demander for that kid? And so that's the perception awareness. That's being aware of how you really perceive each individual student in front of you, and you're aware how those perceptions are going to manifest themselves into the decisions that you make on a daily basis regarding that student. And again, let's be clear, it's not saying you're blind to it. It's not like, oh my gosh, I think that this kid can do it. I know he can do it. He just needs me. Like, That's not what I'm saying. But it is saying that, okay, I know he can do it. And so I'm going to hold his or her feet to the fire. I'm going to be visibly and audibly disappointed with the student and have those tough love conversations, even when they seem like they're not getting through. They're going to know that, man, they really expect something from me because she keeps being real disappointed when I'm not meeting it. And so they will be able to tell where your perception lies. So that's number one, is having that real conversation with yourself. And again, on an ongoing basis, because it's going to happen year after year, kid after kid, situation after situation, where you have to check yourself, renew your mind. Okay, this is a kid that I know it's in them. I know it's in them. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, building rapport and trust. As I have stated before, as a warm demander, that means that you find building rapport and trust the foundation to that kid's scholastic success. And so it's not oh man, they're doing X, Y, and Z, so I should probably start building a relationship. It's brand new coming in my class. That's the foundation that I want with each one of my students, for them to understand that building rapport and trust is number one for me. Now, you have some students who it won't matter to. They would have been successful without you. Got it. That doesn't exempt you from doing it with them. But you also have some students that this is key. It's critical. It's the only way that they're going to be successful in your classroom. Because honestly, I think we've all experienced before, maybe with the one kid that we did decide to do this with, but this can sometimes be the reason why a student chooses to give you that respect and effort, both behaviorally and academically. So really building an authentic interest in their lives and well-being, and that can happen in and out of the classroom. So non-academically, of course, attending, extracurricular events, or it could be having lunch with different groups of students and talking non-academically. It can be a conscious effort to be more visible in their neighborhoods. I know sometimes I've chosen to grocery shop in the neighborhood so that they can see me as a real person, which is always fun. Mrs. Campbell, like, you don't live in the classroom? But being visible in the neighborhoods, or even, going to some of the community events, being vested in the things that they are interested in or things that matter to them and their families. Also academically, it could mean identifying common interests to incorporate into the lesson. Oh, wow, I know that my teacher listens and hears me and knows what's important to me. It could be really knowing your students and where they stand within your classroom, their academic abilities offhand, so that when you're having conversations, you can recite that. Hey, you need to be getting better in this area. This is something you need to be working on. Hey, this is an opportunity for you to bring that one grade up. Knowing that you know me like that is going to make me have that trust in you and know that, wow, you care. Additionally, it can be just being prepared for that student to be successful, going the extra mile for them. And so there's so many ways for you to build rapport and trust with your students, or with any kids that you mentor. So I actually want to take this time to do a little chat again. So within the chat box, one quick way, something that you've done or you've seen done, or maybe a teacher did it with you and you remember it. What's a quick way to build trust, either in the classroom or outside of the classroom? I like it. Okay. Be authentic from day one, for sure. Attend their events, definitely. Consistent follow through. Love that. Showing them that you're listening to them, asking questions about themselves, being involved, listening, caring. Consistency, for sure. Following through on any promises that are made. That's a good one. Learning about their interests, definitely. Um, and as more maybe rolling in, having conferences so that you can be one of the family for sure. Concern goes beyond your schoolwork. Love that. Looking for shared interests, topics outside of school, and looking for ways to connect throughout the week. Take the time to talk and listen. Love that, to their interests and concerns. The listening part for sure. I think I can even attest. I mean, we talk all day. I'm used to it, but and listening is a hard part. Listening to them so that they know they have a voice in the classroom. Listen to them and be open and honest with them. Love that. Yes, 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 yes. Share your own story. So this is kind of leading into the next as well, but definitely that transparency piece. I'm just going to put a label on what a lot of what I'm seeing, but that transparency piece is huge. And that's going to lead us into our next component as well. But I love what I've read there. Definitely the talking and listening, but mostly listening to them, providing the opportunity. I know that we are pressed for time on a daily basis within our classrooms, but if you are really leading with the idea that building rapport and trust is the foundation of success for your classroom, then you are building in that time for your students to have the opportunity to have a voice, for your students to have the opportunity for you to listen to them. And like I said, I can certainly attest to the fact that when I was in the classroom, I a lot of times felt like I didn't have enough time. Like, we don't have time for this. I have to do, X, Y, and Z. We've got to meet these standards. We got to do this. We got to do that. But again, a warm demander, that means that, yes, those things are important, but those things are almost impossible for a good majority or a good portion of my class if I'm not taking the time to build that foundation of rapport and trust, and build that foundation where I give you the opportunity to let me know what's going on with you, either at a classroom, on a classroom level, or even on individual level, to give you that opportunity. And so, again, lots of different ways. I will encourage you that I think we do a lot of these things, but really thinking about the students who aren't successful in your classroom. How is it that you are able to provide this type of rapport and trust with them, the ones that are almost fighting you back for it? Well, how is it that you're going to reach them? Those are the ones that you're going to have to dig a little bit deeper. You're going to have to go to your colleagues and figure out, well, what did you do here? How does this work? And try out some new things. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. So that is number 2, and we'll get to number 3 here. Number 3 is cultivating an achievement mindset. This component for me was definitely the game changer. I think for myself, building rapport and trust kind of came naturally to me, but cultivating an achievement mindset is something that I had to consciously work at. And so to break that down a little bit more, it means that we're helping our students to take on the attributes of an achiever. And so you have to actively and repeatedly teach an achievement mindset to your students. So success and achievement mean that you have to be self-disciplined. You have to be accountable to yourself and others. You have to hold high standards and get comfortable with failure. And for, I think, the majority of teachers that I work with, and this is kind of speaking from the consultant standpoint, a lot of times they'll be like, but they should know this, or they come from this certain family, and I know that they need to be on top of things, or, we get frustrated with it. But if you think about the student's ability to reason, to critically think, to make sound decisions, to plan, control impulses, et cetera, basically to, be an adult, to be, responsible, that's all controlled by a frontal lobe that actually won't be fully developed until after they get their diploma. And so when you kind of keep that in the back of your mind, it will help you to not always get so frustrated. And I'm not saying let them off the hook. Well, that means that they can't do it. No, that's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, because it's not developed, even myself, coming from a family that I would say was pretty responsible, and mom and dad had very high expectations, and you will meet this, that didn't exempt me from the fact that I was going to make some dumb decisions and not be on top of things all the time. So it was a constant effort. It was a constant, okay, I got to help train you into this mindset. And that's something that we have to keep in mind, that we have to help train them to have these attributes, even harder, or it's even more important when maybe when they leave our classroom or they leave school, they're getting possibly the opposite attributes thrown at them on a regular basis. And so keeping in mind that that is our job, we have to help cultivate an achievement mindset. Now, like I said, this means that you're going to have to be transparent even about your own achievement mindset. So I hold high expectations for myself. I said I was going to have such and such, graded by this point. We have really engaging lessons. We have, clearly you can see the effort I put into my job because I expect excellence of myself. And so therefore I can expect excellence of you. It's that earned respect. Additionally, it's consistent. You're not seeing me do it here, and then the next day you can tell I really didn't prepare for this lesson, but I'm expecting excellence of you. That doesn't work that way. You have to be transparent and show that excellence that you require of yourself on a consistent basis. But then on the flip side of that, there's the vulnerability. And the vulnerability is being able to show that failure is a part of the road to achievement. And so, this is twofold. This is the vulnerability to show it within yourself. I often would tell students where I messed up. Oh, actually, I didn't think of that. Oh man, I actually didn't get to this, or I didn't do well on, I would even talk about my evaluations. Didn't do well in this area. I had studied for it and I had done this and I had done that. So I'm going to work on this. Like, being transparent that failure is a part of a person who is trying to achieve something. That's a part of the journey, right? And so getting them comfortable with failure is also going to make them feel like it's okay to put in that effort and that they can trust you because you've built your relationship on rapport and trust already. Additionally, that means that you have to be so well versed and competent within your content that you can provide appropriate areas for productive struggle. And so if you know where your students are, you're very clear on what their capabilities are, you know where you're trying to get them to. So you're figuring out, okay, about where is a good place for me to take them today, to where I know they're probably not going to get it off the first try, or I know that it's going to be difficult. I know they're going to have to really push for this theme or to understand this theory or to understand whatever it is. But I'm competent enough to provide the appropriate roadmap. I'm competent enough to help them through that struggle, but I want them to struggle. I want them to understand that you've got to work hard, that you have to complete, that you have to work past some obstacles. And so being able to, again, create and cultivate that achievement mindset is a combination of those things, but it really starts with self. It starts with holding yourself to those standards, being transparent about your journey, vulnerable enough to show them where you're missing the mark at times, and consistent. And when we are doing that, along with the foundation of rapport and trust that we've laid with these students, you will find students who typically wouldn't have cared, haven't tried, actually starting to do well in your class because they know, A, you care, you're invested in their life, but also there's a clear pathway to success, and it's okay to fail along the way. That teacher is going to help me get to the finish line. And I clearly see it within their own life. So I believe it, because kids are the first ones to call you out on something that's inauthentic. So again, this is not making excuses for kids, but rather normalizing hard work and effort, as well as failure, in the pursuit of success. So those are the three major components. Again, try to make this as quick as possible. I know we're pretty far into the time. And so there's so much more that we could break this down into, and action steps, which will be included in some of our upcoming products, and maybe even more free webinars. We were kind of just trying this out, but those are the three components. So before you go today, key takeaways: think about where you fall on that warm demander scale. Think about which category you fell within so that you can really focus where you need to, you need to create a focus around your refinement efforts. Recall those three components of being a warm demander, and then realize that this is what every single student needs from you. So it's not a pick and choose. It's not a, okay, I'm this for most of my students though. It's every single student needs this from you. So if this is the job you signed up for, it's not an option to remain comfortable where you are. You've got to be willing to be vulnerable, to be consistent, to be transparent, to really put in the effort on the warm and the demand side. And so before you go into your new school year, I would beg of you to set some measurable goals. So what is it, what's the area you really want to work in? What are some of the action steps? Is it certain things that you need to do in the beginning of the year with trust and rapport, especially with certain students, with a certain cohort of students? Or is it on the demand side? Is it maybe, competency in your content area, finding those areas of productive struggle, being able to be more transparent and consistent, having high expectations of yourself, setting aside time, daily, whatever that looks like, come up with your action steps. Give yourself some deadlines so that you are actually going to meet them. And then come up with, what are your success indicators? How do I know that I meant it? What am I going to be able to see? What's the fruit of my labor? And honestly, include me in on it if you'd like. I would love to, and that Justin as well, we love to collaborate with educators. So if it's something that you want to talk a little bit more about, then feel free to do so. You can send us any additional questions or, maybe future partnerships, whatever that looks like, email or visit the website. There's a contact tab there that you can easily reach us at. And so feel free, reach out, ask for whatever it is that you need. If we don't have it, we're in connection with several school districts now that we have so many different teachers we learn from. And that's the fun of this position, is being able to pull and pick out what works elsewhere. And hey, maybe it'll work for you, because that's what we're doing here, is sharing those ideas. Additionally, like I said, the webinars will be posted on our website. And after the webinar today, there will be a follow-up email with kind of a consensus of everything that we talked about today. And while you're on the website, if you make it on over there, we do have our products there. And so Justin wrote a book, Confessions of an Inner City Teacher, quick, easy novel. I actually enjoy it. There's a little snippet about me. So, I think that's pretty cool, but it's really a great book to put some things into perspective and help you to assess where you can, keep going if you're doing something well, or where you can make some refinements. I wrote a social studies connection curriculum guide for middle grades. So if you're a part of a middle school, especially with these new social studies standards, this kind of lays out what you should be teaching, how you should be teaching it, how we can integrate some of that language arts processing skills so that we're really getting down to application and really processing what's going on versus memorizing. And lastly, our CRT 101, an Introduction to Culturally Responsive Teaching. It's a workbook, so there's a lot of information, but then questions and application that will be released on July 1st. And so that's the newest product. That's going to be where you'll find a lot of the things that we've been talking about that are expanded even more. And be able to work through, like I said, some application. How can I apply this to my own practice? So that is it for today. I thank you for joining me. I know it hasn't been too long. It's been about 50 minutes or so. So thank you guys for spending this time with me. Like I said, if you have any questions, any further concerns, anything that you can add to the conversation, we'd love to hear from you. If you want to talk about us possibly coming to your school, we'd love to hear from you. If you want to check out the products, go ahead and visit the website. Again, I thank you so much, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Maybe we can do another one of these. All right, thank you. Enjoy your day, guys.